All the southeastern states besides Alabama have a lottery, and when you do factor in the lottery revenue, Alabama ranks last in terms of raising revenue as a state.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
You have been following, folks know that you work for Alabama Arise. Alabama Arise is a progressive nonprofit advocacy organization in the state of Alabama, a lobbyist for poor folks down in Montgomery. You've been following a lot of the legislation that has been going through the state house, and some of the biggest pieces of news or some of the biggest pieces of legislation here in the state of Alabama have been tax cuts, and for a change, most of the tax cuts have been of the, at the very least, like less objectionable sort, right? And so, Adam, could you, but although, there are still potentially some issues with him. So Adam, can you walk us through, just remind us what the suite of tax cut legislation on offer is right now in Montgomery? Who is introducing these pieces of legislation, and what have the reactions been?
Yeah, happy to do that. We are 1 month out from tax day. So here's a friendly reminder. And taxes are really a big topic in the Alabama legislature right now. This past week, they were actually back home to talk to constituents. So maybe you had a chance to connect with your lawmaker. But the big news is on tax reform. So let's start, like you said, with the big package that's being proposed, and it is coming from the Alabama Republican Party. Many folks are aware that the Alabama GOP has a supermajority in the legislature here in Alabama. They also control, the rest of state government. So when the party decides to make something a priority, they typically can, make that happen legislatively. So they have proposed a package of 4 different kind of tax cuts. And the first one is reducing the grocery tax. So the idea is to provide an additional 1% reduction in the state's grocery tax. Some listeners may recall that the grocery tax was reduced back in 2023. This would, further reduce it. Alabama is one of, I believe, only 13 states that does tax groceries, or at least until 2023 was one of only 13 states to fully tax groceries. And this is something that, folks across the aisle have really been calling for years. You mentioned Alabama Rise. I do want to be clear. I'm just speaking in my personal capacity. I'm not speaking for anyone at this moment but myself. But Alabama Rise has been advocating for ending the grocery tax for, 20 plus years. So it's interesting that the Alabama Republican Party, which has been in control of Alabama government for the last 15 or so of those years, now all of a sudden it is apparently a very big priority. And so it's getting a lot of praise from, like I said, across the aisle. Many Democrats have campaigned on ending the grocery tax as well over the years. So we will see what happens with that. Real quick, the other tax changes that are being proposed maybe aren't as flashy, but one would be to it would actually double the state's tax exemption for withdrawals from retirement plans from $6,000 to $12,000. According to John Wall, the Alabama Republican Party chairman, he believes this would cut taxes by about $45 million annually on those retirees, folks with fixed incomes. The other changes would be increasing the income floor on income taxes and expanding the standard deduction. So they're looking at another $23.8 million cut in state income taxes there. And so that's a little bit about what's being proposed. Representative Danny Garrett has actually sponsored the grocery tax bill, HB 386.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And, Democrats have indicated that they would put forth their own legislation about the grocery tax. I'm not sure if that has made it yet. At least the last reporting I saw, it hadn't been proposed. It's still only taking it down. It's not completely eliminating it. There was some reluctancy to do this over the last couple of years because of concerns about the education trust fund budget, because that is where this tax revenue goes. It goes into the ETF, which is what funds all public education in the state. So there were some concerns about that and the hit to the budget. In the Alabama Reflectors article that just came out this week about it, which I do recommend, it was a very good breakdown. Senator Andrew Jones, he was a big advocate of the grocery tax reduction back in 2023. He said that he thought the grocery tax cut would be funded, at least in part, by allowing the overtime wage tax cut to expire. That was also passed back in 2023. It had a sunset provision for this June. And at the time, they estimated that it would cost the Education Trust Fund budget about $34 million a year. But it's estimated that it's cost more than $230 million and counting. That has been a controversial topic as well. I know that the Alabama AFL-CIO, the State Labor Federation, has been pushing hard to maintain that overtime tax cut. Meanwhile, I actually just saw a piece from the Economic Policy Institute this week that was criticizing tax cuts on overtime wages, which we can get into here in a second. But, those are some of the big moving pieces going on right now in terms of taxes. And I did want to mention real quick the context in which this is happening in, because there was also a recent article in Alabama Political Reporter, about the latest PARCA report. The Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama, every year they do these reports about revenue and where Alabama ranks in terms of other states in the country in raising revenue. And when you adjust for population, Alabama is only trailed by Tennessee in taxes, collecting $4 less per capita. But that's not including the state lottery. All the southeastern states besides Alabama have a lottery. And when you do factor in the lottery revenue, Alabama ranks last in terms of raising revenue as a state. A couple of reasons why that is the case. Per capita property taxes are the lowest in the nation. But the flip side to that is our sales tax rates are among the highest in the country. So the revenue we raise as a state is inadequate to fund even, an average American quality of life. Yet the taxes we do raise are very regressive. It's, a lot of sales taxes on things like food, groceries, which disproportionately hurt poor and working class people. So it's interesting to see this conversation happening. I think part of it, some people are a little surprised by it because at the national level, I don't think it's controversial to say that Republicans have been primarily focused on cutting taxes for the wealthy and for corporations through their changes at DC. Some people are a little surprised to see this from Alabama Republicans. But I believe part of it is just frankly that the wealthy and corporations already have it stacked in their favor so much that there's just not a whole lot left to cut from them, right? I mean, another thing that happens in our tax code is that we are the only state that allows a full deduction for federal income taxes that are paid, which is a tax break that benefits, high income earners disproportionately. So we're the only state to allow both individuals and corporations to fully deduct federal income taxes paid when they calculate state income taxes. And that drains, anywhere from $800 to $900 million in revenue a year, which just for context, gaming or gambling is also another proposed revenue source. And we expect that's going to be back in the legislative session when they return from break next week. And most of the estimates of the gaming packages, even if you were to combine, sports betting, casino gambling, and a lottery, it's still significantly less than what the state could raise by repealing the federal income tax deduction. So I know I just threw a lot of numbers out there, a lot of taxes. But it's very interesting to see this going on in the legislature. And as always, I encourage you to, pay attention and to be engaged with your lawmakers and let them know how you feel about these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw somewhere that I didn't see you mention, that the Democrats have maybe something of a competitor suite of tax cuts that amount to like $1.9 billion over some number of years, supposedly. And what the suite does is it combines a lot of these tax cuts that the Republicans are proposing, and it pays for them by rolling back some of the tax cuts for the wealthy that you've been talking about, or that we've been talking about, like the Choose Act, the private school voucher scam, and the federal income tax deduction to pay for all of those things. So that's a pretty interesting kind of thing. I'm not typically a person that is super. I don't get excited about tax cuts, right? You might get me to be, kind of begrudgingly in favor of something like that. Particularly, I'm, not super excited about them, particularly in a state like Alabama, where, like Adam said, we have the lowest, literally the lowest revenue generation in the country. So tax cuts in general are just not something that excites me. But if you compare that with, removing tax cuts for the wealthy, you start to get me excited. So we'll keep an eye on that and let y'all know what happens, obviously.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.